ओके ओके बंद कर दिले yes. Hello. Mm-hmm. Okay. ठीक है. ठीक है. Okay, so the question is, can you please describe the brief of the mechanism of lasso method? Okay, so lasso regression is nothing but your normal linear regression plus L1 regularization with it. So that means the normal regression is basically your predicted minus your actual square, which is a squared error, and then you add a regularization term lambda with the L1 norm. Okay, so your loss function would look like that. Okay, TensorFlow and Keras. There is another question. What kind of questions are expected for TensorFlow and Keras in the exam? I think so that there is MCQs only, but I have not seen the questions yet because Navin has made the questions. Please, I would say please post this in Moodle, and then here one of the TA is going to reply to that. Okay. But I think there are 10 questions. Each question is 3 marks, and they are MCQs. And the part 1, which is sklearn NumPy pandas, I have set 20 questions. Each question carries 1 mark. and then there are also MCQs, and I think 2 or 3 out of 20 questions could be you write down on the box the answer. You have to write down on the box in the box given below, and then rest of the questions are MCQs. Any other questions? So before any question comes, I'd just like to clarify that I think I have received around 100 on the assignment one. I have received around 111 submissions. I have yet to start grading them, but I think next week I'm going to grade, and I'm going to send a solution also. I mean, there is no straightforward solution to it. I mean, there is no absolute solution to it, but I have a notebook where I have kind of applied whatever method it takes to get a good F1 score. That I'll post after while I grade the assignments. And then after I grade the solution, I'm going to send the actual test file where the actual values of the target variable So one question: what's the difference between L1 and L2 regulation? L1 regulation is your norm. So L1 regulation is lambda into norm of your coefficients, and L2 regulation is lambda into squared norm. Okay, I think I don't know. I think that would have been covered, right? L1 and L2 regulation. So one property of L1 regulation is it has a property of completely nullifying the weight coefficients, okay, because the isofunctions it possesses, and L2 doesn't completely nullify the coefficients. It may not make the coefficients zeros. L1 regulation can make the coefficients zero altogether. Okay, in certain conditions, L1 is better than L2 because it actually makes the coefficients or features through it makes the coefficient zero, through which it can completely discard the feature which is unnecessary or not adding values to your prediction, or overfitting your solutions much greatly. Okay, so what's a good F1 score for that data? Yeah, I don't know. I mean, see, so the thing is, so in that data, so if you see, So it's okay to, I think somebody is going to default. Okay. So okay, so I'll come to the next question later. So what is a good F1 score? Somebody has asked. I'll do one thing. So I'll give the list of F1 top 10 F1 scores what people have got, and also I'll give my solution. Then you can figure out what is a good F1 score. But one thing to keep in mind over here is, like, if so that means if you are kind of saying ki somebody is going to default, uh, and and he is actually not going to default, that's a bad thing. Okay. Okay. So but is like somebody who is going to default and you say he is not going to default, that's okay. Okay. So in that case, your recall should be good in your F1 score actually. Okay. But so I have to see who has got the best F1 score, and I'll just post that later. Which regularization is more used, L1 or elastic net? Okay, L1, elastic net is L1 plus L2. I think so I think it depends on the problem sometime. It's encouraged to try both of them, L1, L2, and elastic net, and see which one works good for you. So ultimately, it's the accuracy or the evaluation metric which makes more sense to you at the end of the day. So whichever regularization actually works good for your problem in hand, you should use that. But L2 is actually used very frequently because you along with feature engineering, because that I mean it doesn't completely, I mean if you have a good intuition about your feature, then L2 is a regularization technique which doesn't completely discard your feature. So and you know that there is importance of all the features, and the L2 is mostly like we use a lot of in our problems we use L2 a lot. Yeah, if you say someone is not going to default and he does, that would be bad. Uh, yes, no, if we say someone not going to default and he does, if we say someone going to default and he doesn't, yes, yeah, I think you are right. If you say someone not going to default and he does, that would be bad, yes. And if you say someone going to default and he doesn't, that's okay. Yeah, you're right. Sandeep Rao was told that. Yeah, that's correct. Okay. It's okay because over marketing is not bad. So if you say somebody is going to default, you basically market or try to retain. Sorry, like you take some actions basically, right? And then okay. Please give an idea about the kind of questions we can expect tomorrow, including TensorFlow and Keras. Yeah, I already told the TensorFlow Keras. I don't have an idea. Just post a question in Moodle, um, and then see if I mean the TAs or Naveen would go to answer that. On the uh, so on the part one course, I have 20 questions. Okay, and then I think 17 or 18 of them are MCQs. Okay, and then two or three questions are basically on the so you have to write it down on the box below. And the questions are, I think there are 5 questions are NumPy, 5 questions are Pandas, and 10 on sklearn. 8 on sklearn and 2 on basic machine learning. Okay. So I think the question which I have covered, like the areas which I have covered are some questions on the APIs. Okay. Like parameters in the APIs. Okay. So just make sure to revise the parameters in the APIs a bit. Okay. And then your all the kind of evaluation metrics. Okay, so just make sure you revise the evaluation metric fundamentals. Okay, and then some on the um, a few on the cross validation and few on the I think the one I covered on the feature selection and extraction. Okay. Okay, I am not sure whether I can. So there is one question. Can you explain the slide multi-class and multi-label? Not sure whether I can actually show the slide over here, but I can explain. Can you? Hope you can actually refer to the slide, and I'll just look at the slide and explain. Is that fine? Just let me bring the slide. Okay. Yeah. So if you see on the slide where I have kind of put multi-class versus multi-level classification. So there are two boxes. One on the left is actually a multi-class classification example, and one on the right is actually multi-level classification example. Okay. So in the multi-class, if you see one in a so if you see row wise, there are 6 rows, and none of the rows have more than one ones. That means a positive class is only one. Okay, so that is multi-class. So there are actually 4 classes, okay, or 5 classes. On the columns are 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. There are 5 classes, and there are 6 examples: 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 rows. Okay, and each row can only take only one. Okay, one positive class. Okay, all will be the negative class. That means any example in your data set will correspond to only one class. Okay, suppose you're classifying between uh, suppose you have here you have 5 classes. Let's say example of maybe 4 classes. Okay, one is a different type of maybe flowers. One is dahlia, lily, rose, and marigold. Okay, so in that data set, uh, either one of the class would be will be active. Like any example will belong to one class only. Okay, it cannot belong to more than one class. Okay, so that means either one of the examples would be either lily, dahlia, or rose or marigold. Okay, you cannot one flower, one certain example cannot have two positive classes associated to it. Okay, and multi-label, in the other case, you can have multiple classes positive for a particular example. For example, on the right hand side box, if you see, there are like again 5 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 4 classes, and then there are 5 certain examples, which are the rows, and you can see the multiple columns are actually positive in case of multi-level. I'll give you an example. Suppose you are actually doing a multi-level classification of some kind of text. Okay, and the text actually, for example, there was one data set where the text can belong to multiple labels, okay, or multiple class. So that means there are like suppose 4 classes. One is like suppose comments. So comments in a website or something like that, you are identifying whether the comment is actually abusive, toxic, racial, racist, or some or maybe offensive or something like that, right? So here in this case, the one example can belong to 2 classes. That means it can be racial also, it can be abusive also, right? In that case, both the labels will be positive for a certain example. Okay, but in contrary to that, in multi class, not more than one class could be positive for a certain example. So I'm waiting on some questions if you have. One more thing to add over here is like the questions on NumPy. Few of the questions will have some code snippet, and then in the multiple choice question answer, you will have one of the answers to it, and you will just have to select the answers. But that requires you to, I think, a small code snippet will be like 4 or 5 lines, and then you have to just evaluate that code snippet and then find out the answer for that one, and then select the right answer. So one question is, exam is 40% or 60%? And there's a slight confusion here. I think for the first part, the sklearn, NumPy and Pandas, the assignment is of 30 marks. Okay, and the exam, there are 20 questions. Each question carry 1 mark. Okay, and they are kind of very straightforward questions, so I think it will not take more than 30 minutes. Okay. By some question, if you know the answer, you just write it down in 2-3 seconds. Just find out the answer there. Calculative questions are very low, where you have to kind of calculate something. They are actually less in number. Okay. On the second part, which is like Keras and TensorFlow, in that I think Navin has put 20 marks. Assignment is 20 marks, and the questions, the exam questions are of 30 marks. Okay. So I think tomorrow's exam, it will be like 50 mark mm, exam. So 20 questions will carry 1 mark, and then Navin's part will be 30 marks. Okay. So need to keep Jupyter notebook on? No. It's not. Shall we? So one question is, shall we keep the Jupyter notebook on to do some programming? No, it's not required. It's not required at all. So I think Sandeep has signed out. So he said, I don't have any question anymore. So I'm signing out. Manojit, yeah, his last question was about the exam. So the percentage of exam and assignment. Uh, so he is also signing out. And who else is active? Any other question? Akshay Nagpal. Hello. Actually, there are no more questions. 10 minutes. Okay, I'll stop. Okay.